So before I got into anime and manga, my main favorite thing to read and watch were comic books, specifically Marvel Comics. However, I haven't talked about the scaling of the Marvel Comics universe much on this channel. Plus, Marvel Rivals comes out and I've been super hyped for the game, so I want an excuse to talk about the characters in it. For those who don't know, it's essentially Overwatch but replaced with the superheroes and villains from the Marvel Comics universe. So why not compare Goku to the roster of characters in the game? We'll be using Goku from the Dragonball Super manga and the mainline Universe 616 versions of the Marvel Comics characters when possible. Can Kakarot take down the likes of Thor with his Super Saiyan power, or does he get folded by Hawkeye? Let's find out. If you like this kind of stuff, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's jump right in. Now, there are 33 characters in the base roster for Marvel Rivals that Goku has to go up against, even when not including characters like Galactica or Doctor Doom, who are also in the game but just not playable. So I'll be sorting these characters into general tiers of power to make things a bit easier to understand, and I'll try to move pretty quick so this video isn't 10 hours long. For the most part, if Goku can beat one of these guys in the tier, he's probably strong enough to beat all the other guys in the tier, unless they have better hacks abilities or slightly higher scaling. We'll just scale Goku as we go, but also understand that these are comics we're talking about. Characters blatantly vary in ability based on numerous nerfs or buffs to their power. While most people misinterpret the meaning of the quote to say power scaling doesn't exist, this is what Stan Lee was talking about generally in that one interview. There can always narratively be a justification for any Marvel character to perform a given feat, and that doesn't contradict previous things they've done or have future limitations. So just understand that most of the Marvel characters probably at some point have done something more impressive than what I talk about today. Consider everything today as a mid-end to their scaling arguments. Now, let's start with what I would call the low-tier characters. In this tier, you have heroes and villains who within the context of the Marvel Universe are people who are usually just really well-trained and good at fighting to some degree, though there can be some with definite superpowers, tech, or enhanced strength beyond that of even those characters. While some guys are definitely stronger than others in this tier, in the grand scheme of the Marvel cosmology, they are essentially all the same. The Marvel Rivals characters within this tier are Black Widow, Winter Soldier, Black Panther, Hawkeye, Captain America, Punisher, Psylocke, and Moon Knight. Now, just because everyone here is low tier within the Marvel Universe does not mean that they are all weak, and in fact, they might be more impressive than you think. Even as a baseline for Speed It, for example, characters with no special powers like Hawkeye and Black Panther are able to react to and dodge attacks in the time frame of a microsecond, making their speed already massively hypersonic plus or relative to lightning. This is made even more consistent as other characters in this tier like Captain America can react to the direct blast of lightning from characters like Electro or even react to lasers. Still, everyone in this tier, even at their worst, are wall level, as smashing through brick and concrete are commonplace among these characters for decades, or at least among the people they fight. At a higher end, they have consistently tanked pretty large rocket or grenade launcher explosions that can give them building level durability or beyond. As they can hurt people who can hurt them, they should also be capable of hitting this hard. Now, several of them have some unique capabilities that can certainly get them higher, like Black Panther's prep that can nullify the powers of stronger characters or at least contend with them, Psylocke's mental attacks that can potentially one-shot anyone without strong mental defense, or Hawkeye having arrows that have a nuclear yield comparable to city-busting explosions. Now, admittedly, Captain America is a really weird case, as sometimes he's portrayed as being able to survive against the likes of Hulk and Thor, but usually it's through clever use of pressure points and protecting himself with his shield. Either way though, can these guys beat Goku consistently? No. Most of the time, these guys are not going to be surviving a direct planet-busting attack to the face, and Goku only gets exponentially stronger and faster from when he was planetary. So it's very likely just through sheer power and speed, even versions of Kid Goku are going to give a lot of these guys trouble. However, an interesting case can be made for them giving him a much harder time in equal stats. Most of these heroes in this tier are on a similar tier of skill to Goku, either knowing every martial art on the planet or being to outskill and beat people who can through sheer experience. But either way, one Kamehameha aimed directly at them is going to be melting through this tier. So let's just move on. Before we go to mid tier, I want to cover the characters whose scaling I'm just genuinely unsure about, which admittedly is a good part of the roster, made up of Luna Snow, Jeff the Shark, Magic, Cloak and Dagger, Penny Parker, Mantis, Star-Lord, Rocket Raccoon, and Groot. Everyone in this tier is either just from a part of Marvel Comics I'm not super familiar with, or to my knowledge, just don't have a lot of feats. For example, the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe has never been a part I've read too much of, so I'm not really familiar with the feats of the weaker Guardians of the Galaxy. Both Star-Lord and Rocket seem pretty normal without their tech, but with their tech, they can damage pretty powerful aliens, but to confidently say they're planetary of something is hard for me to do with confidence. Groot is a slightly different boat, as he's clearly power-wise beyond both of them, and might scale to Cosmic Ghost Rider, but it's not really a big fight, and Frank doesn't seem to be going out loud or anything. If you are a personal fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy comics, let me know your thoughts on how strong they are. Meanwhile, characters like Jeff, Penny Parker, and Luna Snow are all pretty new and not that major as characters, so they really haven't done much. Finally, Magic and Cloak and Dagger are odd cases because they're characters that have been around for decades now, but for the life of me while I was doing research, I couldn't find a single impressive feat from either of them. Also, neither of them are super hyped up as having their normal power be on the level of many of the mid-tier threats that we'll talk about in a moment. If you want Magic at her peak, with a fraction of the Phoenix Force and help from Colossus, she was able to take down Thor, but the Phoenix Force is an insane amp, so clearly she isn't this strong normally. While that's out of the way, let's move to mid-tier. What I consider to be mid-tier of the Marvel Universe has the largest range out of the three tiers, but they are clearly portrayed as stronger than the previous tier at their peak, but weaker than the high tiers. In the mid-tier, we have Iron Man, Magneto, Namor, Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Iron Fist. Now, unlike the previous tier, in which pretty much everyone there had interacted at some point and thus could kind of be communally scaled to each other, the mid-tiers are all over the place and have completely separate feats and completely separate scaling. However, it does feel like, depending on the story, they can be sometimes pretty close to the low-end characters and some versions of high-tier characters. For example, Spider-Man. On the basic level, it's pretty consistent that he's able to contend with pretty much any of the low-tier characters and teams up with them very frequently. However, what sets him apart are his villains. Some of his opponents have pulled off impressive feats that arguably make them island level or beyond, but when Peter locks in and stops holding back, something he's doing all the time, he can scale way higher. Just for example of this, during Fear itself, Peter was able to damage a version of the Thing amped by an equivalent of Thor's hammer while fully trying his hardest. This is insane, as even on the absolute bare minimum lowball, the Thing is verbatim stated to shake off attacks that could blow up planets. He's also sometimes scrapped with some other characters with potentially way higher scaling, like Heralds or even the Hulk. But Peter clearly hits his limit against higher tier beings, like Loki, for example. Iron Fist is in a bit of a similar boat. His normal stats are consistently on the level of low tier characters, but the Iron Fist attack itself can power up Danny to way higher levels, as he has sent way stronger characters flying back with the attack on occasions. Just like the previous two, Wolverine seems to bounce around between being way stronger and way weaker. In essence, he is in a stamina and attack potency good. He fought pretty close with pretty much everyone in low tier, usually only beating them because he can heal and they can't. However, given the right situation, he can straight up damage and fight higher tier characters due to his adamantium skeleton being able to cut through them. While he is always usually outclassed in these situations, he's never outright killed by them either. Namor is an often forgotten Marvel character, despite being one of the oldest ones to exist, and he's pretty consistently a planetary threat at the bare minimum, having fought pretty much every other bare minimum planetary guy in the Marvel Universe. He actually similarly suffers from the Phoenix Force fraction downscale, as just like Magic, he needs the Phoenix Force to take on Thor, which again is a high bar, but it's worth mentioning. Iron Man and Magneto are interesting because they have directly fought each other essentially to a stalemate, though it could be argued Magneto kind of gave up at the end of the fight. Regardless, Iron Man is a strange character to scale, as he kind of consistently gets stronger over time or makes armor exactly strong enough to serve his needs. So can these guys beat Goku? Just like before, to say these guys scale to universe-busting attacks that could wipe it out in a couple punches is simply not consistent. Even if these guys on occasion can stagger these universal beings when at their absolute peak. At best, Wolverine might get a lucky hit and stab Goku in the chest or something, or Iron Man could build a Goku Buster suit, but for the most part, Goku would probably be fine against these guys. Finally, we have the high tier characters, and once again, there is a pretty massive jump in ability between these two tiers, and unlike the previous mid and low tiers, it's incredibly rare for anyone here to struggle with someone from a lower tier. At this point, pretty much everyone here at the most gracious lowball is in the universe, if not multiversal tier, though most of them are far higher in power. Once you reach this level of strength, things get super complicated, convoluted, and complex, as the Marvel cosmology is kind of insane, and there's no way to capture its scope in just one video. Still, the characters in this tier are Hulk, Squirrel Girl, Hela, Loki, Thor, Venom, Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, Storm, and Adam Warlock. For an absolute baseline, characters like Odin and other gods are explicitly stated to be capable of destroying or recreating the entire Marvel multiverse, which is backed up by plenty of other feats and statements. At this point, Thor at worst has surpassed that version of his father and can rival or outright surpass similar beings like Galactus. This is important as there are dozens of statements of the Marvel multiverse containing infinite universes, each which in turn split off to their own infinite amount of universes. As a baseline, being able to destroy the multiverse in Marvel makes you multiverse plus level if that wasn't obvious. However, the Marvel cosmology doesn't stop there, and there are repeated statements about there being higher spatial dimensions beyond just the fourth that are infinitely larger and infinitely transcend the ones before. Entities like Mephisto or the abstracts of Marvel exist in realms beyond this infinite dimensional structure of their multiverse, and pretty much everyone in this tier at their peak can in some way contend with this level. We already mentioned Thor surpassing Odin, but Hulk, Venom, Loki, and Hela are either directly comparable to recent versions of Thor, while just also having their own scaling that could get them to that level independently. Meanwhile, Adam Warlock can just get amped enough to outright beat Mephisto in a 1v1, Doctor Strange can summon the power of abstracts of Marvel, and even momentarily match the Infinity Gauntlet, the same weapon capable of defeating multiple abstracts at once. Scarlet Witch quite literally rewrote all of reality during House of M, and more recently she took on an abstract entity known as Chaos, who was equal to other abstracts in power. One of the placements that surprised me the most was Storm, as before this video I would have assumed she was planetary at best, but no, she's actually super powerful at her full godly potential, being able to make storms that could tear apart the multiversal Yggdrasil and hurt beings who are potentially beyond all realities in the multiverse. Finally, we have Squirrel Girl, who is the funniest place to end this, as she's the closest thing to a Raleigh the Marvel Universe has. Her powers vary quite a bit, and when she beats people it's kind of treated like a joke. Still, she's beaten both Doctor Doom and Thanos, who technically are on the lower end of this scale without their bigger power-ups, but there's always the chance for the sake of the joke she defeats an abstract or something. But either way, how does Goku do against this tier? Unfortunately, not well at all. Even just comparing cosmologies, Marvel's absolutely blows Dragon Balls out of the water. I've been pretty open about scaling Goku to low multi, and that just isn't enough to compare to the baseline multiversal cosmology of Marvel. Furthermore, even when taking a potential outerversal or hyperversal scale for Goku, he still would fall short, as there's even a hierarchy of outerversal beings in Marvel that these high-tier Marvel heroes are contending with. So, to answer the question at the beginning, can Goku rival Marvel? The answer is no. Ultimately, there's very few Marvel characters that perfectly fall within the same tier as him. Either they are far, far weaker or far, far stronger, with very few people falling in between, and especially not anyone who's appearing in Marvel Rivals so far. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As always, thank you to my members who got to see this video early, and if you disagree with my takes, let me know how I was wrong in the comments down below. See ya!